Hey everyone, today we're going to be building a camp in the edge of the woods, but first we got to stop here at Lowe's and I need a piece of metal roofing and some long gutter nails that we're going to use as tent stakes. I think they'll be a bit cheaper. Alright everyone, I could not find the roofing nails, but I think these will work. They're much cheaper than roofing nails and they got some really good threads that I think will grip onto the ground. And this right here is cheaper than metal roofing. This right here is the ridge of a metal roof, so that'll actually work much better. It's cheaper too. Alright everyone, so I'm gonna get this instead, which is aluminum flashing, to heat proof what I need to heat proof, because that other piece of flashing I just had in my hands was not priced properly. At the register it rang up $76. Not gonna pay for that. I know a lot of things in Canada are already twice the price, but still. That was ridiculous. It really helped a lot going into Lowe's that everything in the store is set up exactly the same as the Lowe's near my house. Now we're just gonna get some gasoline right now, and that's by the liter, not the gallon, so you gotta times that by 4, and the Canadian dollar is 36% less, so subtract about 36% from that. All right everyone, I'm all ready to set up camp now. Just had something to eat. So right here, we're gonna camp with this gigantic pile of firewood. This gigantic pile of firewood is to run a central boiler, which you just throw giant logs in, and it doesn't need to be split because the central boiler is so big. So right here I was thinking, on the end of this giant pile, I'm gonna throw another tarp over the top of that. And then I'm gonna cut a hole in the tarp. I'm gonna put the sheet metal I'd bought over that hole I make, duct tape around it, cut a hole so we can have a chimney pipe coming up through it. That really thin aluminum won't transfer heat very far, especially with the cold weather tonight. So the heat transfer won't go over to the tarp and melt it like a piece of steel would. At least that's the plan. And then once we have a tarp over this, the very end, I'm gonna take another tarp, secure it with maybe some more duct tape, and then we'll have a door. So the first thing that I gotta do is come over here and remove these, because they're covered in seeds that'll get stuck to clothing and stuff. And then I'm gonna shovel out in here, and the wood stove will hopefully melt out the rest. And I bought a bunch of those carriage bolts today because they're a lot cheaper than tent stakes. And hopefully that'll secure the tarp down to the ground. I'll time-lapse the building of this, and if anything interesting comes up, I'll show you a little bit of it. So the tarp was a perfect length to make it over to this piece of rebar. I tied it, but the tie downs that came with the tarp are absolute garbage. It snaps so easily. Good thing I keep this stuff in the car. In case something on the car starts falling off, I can tie it up. Having random things like this in the car can come in handy. I also brought my duct tape out here, which I'll be using shortly. Now, where's the end of it? Oh, come on. They don't make this simple. All right, 10 minutes later, finally found it. And this is much stronger. I can't break it with my hands. The wind is picking up. Let's get this thing tied down on the other side. Coming around back. Let's grab that tarp and pull it as close to this as possible. All right, we're gonna just hammer one in right here. Heavy hammer, pushed it right into that log. That closed up that little gap. That might rip. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's not severely windy. I actually haven't seen heavy wind in the past couple weeks at all. Hopefully it can be like that one more night. Despite only having the space here to use a third of the tarp, it's still really good space. The middle here is about 6 feet, and there's quite a bit of room. Now I hope it's not too windy where this flaps around too much, because I tried to tighten this up. Can't really do anything about this wiggliness. So now it's time to hopefully cut a spot for a wood stove in here. All right, everyone, now I just insulated along the bottom of the tarp so wind can't get under it, can't lift it up as much, and then we'll work on a door there in a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and cut a hole in the tarp. Then I'm gonna put duct tape on those parts so it can't start fraying from there. Then I'm gonna cut a piece of this flashing and I'm gonna tape it over that hole with a hole going through the center of the flashing for the wood stove pipe. I just bought this wood stove. It's a pretty nice one. It's got a very thick cooktop, very thick. The metal's very thick. It's also got a much larger door than my other stainless steel stoves. It's got a large glass window. I bought this because it would have been more expensive going home to Maine and picking up the one I already own than to just buy one here. It came with some fire gloves. It came with two 90-degree pieces, so if I wanted, I could have it go up, 90 out, 90 up, and the pipe, you just keep it away from that stuff. You could suspend it with metal wire. I've done that before. That is a possibility. I'm thinking of how exactly I'm going to build my door right now. But I have another 8 by 10 foot tarp that should seal up the entire doorway. Right now, I think I'm going to do what I planned all along, build some kind of spot for the pipe to just come up through the roof. All right, everyone, I got the duct tape. It's been in my car for like 5 years, so it's kind of wrinkled from the summer heat. Took off a few layers, you know, it kept flaking and not doing very well, but now it appears to be good now that I got the outsides off. Well, let's go ahead and cut a hole here that is definitely smaller than the flashing we bought. Hopefully it doesn't fray too much. All right, so far so good. And immediately I'm going to shore this up with duct tape so it can't fray. Now I need a dry work area because I need to put tape on the sides of this because this itself will cut the tarp as it's moving around in the slight wind. First I have to hopefully dry it because tape does not want to stick to this wet metal. Nice and easy. That's not going to do anything. Plus this metal is greasy too. All right, everyone, turns out the duct tape does stick to the greasy and wet metal pretty well. Look at that. Doesn't come off. So when you press it, it seems to just push the water droplets out away from the tape. Good. See? Doesn't come off. So this is nice. So now we gotta flatten it out quite a bunch and go tape it over there, over that hole. But we gotta make the hole in it first for the chimney pipe. Just some slight buckles and corrugation to keep it from buckling or wanting to roll back up. All right, so here's the wood stove. Gonna take the wood stove out now. We're not gonna need these diagonal pipes today, I don't think. Now we gotta make a hole that this can fit through. Nice. All right, everyone, that looks pretty good. Large area. Let's see what it looks like from the inside. Hopefully our wood stove doesn't produce that much heat, but this is very thin aluminum and the heat shouldn't transfer very far. All right, everyone, let's set the wood stove up. So this wood stove has actually really nice feet. My other one, you mess with the feet, the bolts keep falling apart, but these, the nut is welded on, so that's a lot better. So we'll set our stove up right about here. As it heats up, it'll melt the ground. It might need some shimming. It's going to create maybe mud once it starts defrosting the floor. Now let's get this set up right. All right, everyone, this went together really good. There's our poker stick. We don't use the chimney caps because every little camping stove I've used, if you use the chimney cap, it just restricts it so much that it causes issues. And if you put a spark arrestor on it, it makes it so the smoke comes right back in. It just cannot breathe. But when there's snow on the ground, you really don't need a spark arrestor. And I wouldn't be using something like this in the summer. So yeah, that was another problem I also ran into with these. These are stoves that are meant to be used with a hot tent or this, which is plastic. When you use this, any sparks from the fire, they're gonna travel up here, hit this, come through here, and fall back down and make holes everywhere. But if you leave the top of the chimney just wide open, the sparks go up into the sky, cool down, and they land somewhere. This time of year, there's no chance of a forest fire. Everything's snow covered, pretty cold. It's been not dry, so it's good now. Yeah, these things cause more problems than they're worth in my experience. And these angles would be for if I wanted to send it out like that and up. We don't need those today, but that's really cool that the stove came with those because my other camping stove, I had to buy those separately. Right here is the damper to control airflow. Really nice. And this thing, I expect it to run pretty hot. We'll have to go collect some kindling. Got a pretty nice setup. That looks very nice. I think that's Nice and far away from the tarp. Don't think anything's gonna burn. Now, once we use this once, this thing's not gonna be nice and shiny stainless steel anymore, but the thing is, it won't rust. Even when it becomes discolored, it's gonna look purple in some areas, yellow in some areas. The temper changes once these things heat up the first time. All right, everyone, the shelter is just about set up. I'm gonna show you what I have. The only things we need to get now are pots and pans out of the car, cookware, that kind of stuff. Then later on, we'll go for a little walk in the woods. Back behind here, there's hundreds and hundreds of acres of just woods. Good amount of wilderness there. So we got this thing set up. I put random objects on top of this because the wind kept getting under and flapping. Ever since I put that there, it doesn't seem to gust anymore. Doesn't seem to push air into the sleeping area anymore. Very, very light wind. I'm glad it's being light. The forecast doesn't expect it to go up at all. And you see, I'm walking around now without a jacket. It feels very warm. The sun is very warm right now, but it is slightly below freezing. We'll take a look at the thermometers. So this went together not too bad. So this is the door over here, and around bedtime, I think I'll use a blanket or something to barricade it. So this should work out nice, this system with the flashing. Here's the temperature gauge. We're reading about -5 or about 22 degrees Fahrenheit. So if I grab this right now, just watch this. I'm gonna stick it up here where I had it originally, on the top of this little tree I broke. Now that it's in the sun, watch how rapidly the temperature goes up just being in the sun. I think you can literally see the hand moving, right? Yeah. We're gonna go inside for just a couple minutes and watch what that changes to when we come back out. So we got a propane heater in here just in case we wake up in the middle of the night and the stove is completely out. We can just start this up for a little bit to warm up, but maybe we won't even use that. Maybe we'll use it in the morning because it'll be much colder. We'll maybe use that to clean up. Tonight's gonna be actually the first pretty nice cold night. You know, every time I've ever thought of Canada, I thought very, very cold, but even here in the middle of Ontario, not super far north, but the middle, it's much warmer than Maine's weather. I look back at home at my forecast, and every day it's below freezing for the high. Here, most days, it's quite a bit above, but today's finally a day that's not going to hit the freezing mark. But in here, this is kind of like a little greenhouse. It's considerably warmer in here. We got a bunch of dripping water right here. It's not dripping outside anywhere, but it's dripping in here. You see all the icicles have a good amount of drips coming off them. Inside here, we're reading about 2 degrees, or about 35 Fahrenheit. There's our time. Looks really cool, these logs in here. I wonder if we'll see any mice or anything living in there come out at night during the time lapse of sleeping like I usually do. We have had a mouse in the time lapse before, never bothered us. It just comes in smelling the food and it's curious. Wood piles like this often attract things like that. Little rodents living in them. We'll see what comes out. So this log here goes all the way across the whole pile. Got the wood stove set up here. Earlier, right after I went to Lowe's, I got some breakfast and I have this to snack on as I'm working. Got some donut bites and some, it's called a mocha ice cap. This morning I had a farmer's wrap for breakfast. Here's some gloves I'll finally be able to try. I keep always every year buying gloves over and over again at Walmart for like 20 bucks and they rip pretty easily. They don't really keep my hands warm, but these ones here are supposed to be down to -20 gloves, and hopefully they're much better because they're leather. Paid a bit more for them. Hopefully I'll get quite a few years out of them. You see, they're actually for snowmobiling. You open this up, you can put a key in there or your driver's license in the other one. Then you don't have to carry anything in your pockets that might fall out. This wall right here I secured on the bottom with stakes, secured in the top, so this cannot blow and touch the chimney at all. And over here, I'm going to use another little blanket or piece of plastic once we're in for the night to seal this up. Or maybe we'll leave it wide open, depending on how hot we get the stove. We could also leave the propane running by the door. This propane is from our last camp. It's actually half empty, so if we use that up, that's okay. We'll go fill it up at the store. These things, to exchange them, it costs about $35, or some places I found up here will do it a bit cheaper. Home Hardware will do it for 20 bucks, which is very cheap, just to refill that tank. And that will power this powerful heater for 14 hours on high, about 30 hours or so on low. And now we're gonna take a peek outside. Yeah, look at that. Look how much this thermometer moved just by being in the sun. That's crazy. We'll put it back over here on the tree, back in the shade so we can get a accurate reading. Wow, that temperature skyrocketed just sitting in the sun. Wow. And look, if we zoom in, you can literally see the hand moving. Look at that. Dropping back down. All right, everyone, I'm gonna grab the sled and we're gonna head off into the woods and try to collect as much firewood as I can fit. We're gonna bring the sled into the shelter and we're gonna start a fire up. Hopefully that whole sled worth will go until tonight. Then later on tonight, we'll go get more of it, hopefully enough to survive overnight without having to leave the tent. And stuff like this, bigger stuff, I can cut it up into a couple smaller pieces. Once we're inside the tent, it'll give me something to do. This wood has a lot of resin in it, so it's going to be burning very hot, even though it's rotten on the outside. There's lots of good wood out here, so tonight I'll just keep coming back in the dark, because we're not very far. We're a 1-minute walk from the site, and there's so much wood here. These thicker pieces will make the fire last a lot longer throughout the night. All the small stuff I collected is just to start it. And we'll also look around for a birch tree. There's actually a birch tree right there. So we'll head over there and look for pieces of it laying on the ground. Should be pretty easy. You see how rotten it is on the outside, but the middle is still super solid. And the middle part's flammable as long as the outside isn't too wet. It's a little bit wet, so I'm going to show you over here. Here's a rotten piece that I just broke off, but really close to the tree trunk, there's always resin in there, which is very flammable. Not in the ends of the branch, but very close to the tree, I'll show you. Right here. You see the rot goes in about this far. In the middle, there's lots of resin. That's called fat wood, and it's very flammable. These pieces, they'll burn very hot for a long time if you cut off all these nubs on the tree. All right, everyone, now we're gonna go over to this birch tree, and we're gonna look for some bark we can take. Don't peel it off the living tree, but it's actually really nice if we could find a dead tree, because you just make a slit and it peels off so nicely. Alright everyone, if this was summertime, I'm sure we'd see pieces of it all over the ground, but it's snow covered too much. That giant pile right there of pine cones, squirrels have been ripping them apart to get the seeds out of them. Now you don't want to rip it off a living tree, it'll hurt the tree. It'll also make the tree look like garbage forever in that spot, likely killing it by girdling it if you peel it off. If it's a dead tree, it will look bad when you peel it off, so make sure it's not in a spot that really matters. But we're going to continue around and hopefully we find a big piece sticking out of the snow somewhere. Here is a completely dead birch tree. You can see there's no tops, and they're completely covered in mushrooms. And if you look over here, you can see someone else has peeled off a whole bunch of it to make a fire of their own. And this is what I was talking about. You see, it doesn't look that pleasant, so you probably don't want to do that in your yard. But let me show you up close how easy it is to peel it off. So right here, you can see that there's probably half a dozen layers of it here. You can peel it very thin, and it's very flammable. This tree I can tell hasn't been dead for long, so it's got still lots of oil in it. So here, hopefully we can, we can peel off a whole ton of it from someone else's cut. Try to get a big piece. See if we can peel all the way around the tree with it. Nope. But hopefully we can get these layers apart. We can burn the whole thing. That'll definitely burn. It's much easier to peel if the tree's been dead a long time. These little scraps will burn. I'm just going to try to collect a whole bunch of them. The stuff I'm getting off is actually perfect. It doesn't take much, but I'm gonna gather a good amount, so if the fire goes out in the middle of the night, I got enough already there to restart it. These little pieces are perfect for starting a fire, and you see how I'm only removing the top layer or two. So if this tree was alive, this wouldn't hurt it. Over the years, it would naturally shed the outer layers. But ripping deep into it would kill a living tree, but this is already dead. There's tons of it on here. That's plenty of it for tonight. These really small, fine pieces that are like paper are very flammable, and they'll catch the thicker pieces, and this stuff burns with black smoke and smells like diesel exhaust because it's very oily. Alright everyone, we're back to the sled, and I think I'm going to collect a little bit more tiny kindling for that to catch before the big logs. Just small stuff like this. Very dry stuff. It's been dead a long time. Trees reject any branches that don't reach the sun anymore. So there's always dead branches like this, unless someone's been camping here before. We got a lot of firewood in here. This might even be enough for the majority of the night, because a lot of this looks rotten, but it's fat wood. Pick this up. And there's still enough room to sleep in here tonight. It's a bit warmer inside here, so I'm gonna take my jacket off and just throw it up there. It's nice and dry. That's okay. Sit down in here and make a little fire. All right, everyone, back over here on this log, there's a big scar from the log skid or excavator. You can rip off all this hair which is also super, super dry. And that can be used as kindling too. So everyone, we're gonna be sliding around a lot tonight. Tarps on the ground like this. Super duper slippery. But maybe we'll put a blanket between this to kind of grip the snow. We do have a blanket we could put under it. Now we're gonna go ahead and start the fire. All right, we're gonna start this wood stove up for the first time. We're gonna start with all the very dry stuff. Some of the birch bark. Put some of this in here. And some small kindling. And a couple larger sticks. Once we get that burning, I'll throw in some of the much larger stuff we brought over. I like how this camping stove has a pretty big firebox. I have one that's like half the size of this, and you have to break stuff into such small pieces. This is a much better solution. So we'll get everything off of the stove now. And try to give it a light. In just a moment, I'll bring you outside to show you the chimney smoking outside. Just want to make sure it catches nicely first. We're getting a little bit of smoke in here, so we're just going to crack the door and it should start venting up the pipe. Make sure the damper is all the way open. Good. It's sucking air. It should start heating up fast. I like how this wood stove, you see it's got a separate metal plate from the actual stove, making it nice and thick. Oh, I'm already feeling fire. It's getting nice and warm. The pipe is starting to get warm. Nice looking stove. I think this is going to catch nicely. Yep, everything is drafting up the pipe now. No smoke is coming into the room anymore. Let's take a look. All right, you can see some flames and all the smoke going up the chimney pipe, which is good. You see how it's making some black smoke, that birch. I'm gonna go ahead and completely shut the door. And this stove is gonna run very efficient. It's like a little rocket stove. It'll produce tons of heat for fast cooking food. It's going up. And remember, this pipe is probably gonna turn purple by morning. The temper of the stove will be ruined, so it'll never look this nice again. Let's go outside. Oh wow, it's barely smoking outside. Like, I can definitely see smoke, but not much. If I zoom way in, you can see the wavy heat coming out of it, but barely any smoke at all. We'll have to throw some more stuff in there just to get it to smoke for a good example. But these stoves burn very clean, very little smoke, because they're like little rocket stoves. They burn through material very quickly, but that can be solved by shutting the damper. If I go shut the damper right now, chances are it'll start smoking a bit. Let's go on in. Let's shut the damper all the way, see if it started smoking. No, still burning pretty efficiently, even with the damper shut. Nice. Is it hot? Yep, already too hot to touch anything. And the heat is barely transferring away from the pipe. Perfect. All right, damper's all the way shut, but you see there's lots of cracks and stuff around the door. So open the damper back up, open the stove back up, and it came with a little poker stick here. Oh, the flames are coming out a little bit. Let's get some bigger stuff. Oh, there we go. The pipe is now starting to turn yellow. Then it'll eventually turn purple. The entire top of the stove, you see the temper is changing. Let's put a big piece of fat wood in there. It'll fit. There we go. Nice. Let's see if we can fit some other sticks in there to try to keep this thing running for a while. Once it gets dark, we're gonna cook some soup in here. That's what I plan on making. We'll cut up everything. Yep. Got some bigger twigs, throw them all in there. Hopefully they catch. Can we, yep, jam that one in there. It's pretty hot in there. That'll catch up in a few minutes. Nice. Another piece that's got a good, yep. Shut the door. That'll combust in a little bit. Now it should be smoking outside while that catches up. Let's go look. All right, now we got a little bit of smoke, but still not that much. These stoves are designed to run very efficient, so they don't smoke very much. Now if we turn a little bit the sun angle, now you can see it puffing a little bit. These stoves are really good because even if you're using them in like a campground, not much smoke to bother anyone. Now my other big camping stove I've used a lot last year from Guide Gear, that one runs more like a traditional indoor wood stove. It's got a normal damper on the pipe and that one will smoke a bunch. But once they get going, any wood stove once it gets going typically won't smoke at all if it's running properly. And all the stuff we're putting in here is very dry. So yeah, we're doing good. Let's go inside. The stove is probably all heated up now. Let's take a look at the outside temp. It's about almost -4 Celsius and about 25 Fahrenheit. Coming back inside. Temperature hasn't started going up at all yet, but it is a bit warmer just because we're inside. It's acting a little bit like a greenhouse. The stickers are coming off. The bottom parts of the pipe, the diameter is slightly bigger than the top, and that's so the top pieces can fit into these and they all come compacts into the stove. Everything's starting to catch up now. Doing good. Top. That's very hot. This will be very good for cooking food later. Oh, look, it had a sticker with a number 1, but it also has numbers that'll never go away. That's kind of cool also. It's actually engraved into it. The numbers help a lot for assembling. We're burning good now. That fat wood will last a really long time. And now the temper is starting to turn a little bit purple. We're not running it that hot. Later we'll run it very hot when we're cooking. Hot stainless steel acts hydrophobic. Ooh, that's so cool. It's just so hot that it doesn't become wet. Running nice. I like how the handle here doesn't seem to become hot like the rest of the stove. Running pretty well. This is entertaining when you're sitting in here bored. It looks absolutely beautiful outside right now that the sun's starting to go down. I'm gonna walk out to the road for a moment and show that maybe a better view out there. All right, everyone. It's time to go into the camp for the night. Now that the sun's just about down, we can throw some more wood on the fire. Now it's time to set up a few lights inside here so we can see well. Once it gets completely dark, I'll bring you back outside because I'm sure you'll be able to see this thing all lit up. Maybe even see the fire flickering in there. But at the moment, we're burning pretty clean. All right, everyone. We got a blanket here for the doorway and a bunch of these clips. One more down here. Doesn't have to be perfect. We'll be making a lot of heat. Maybe we'll use one more, we'll secure it from the inside so that we still have a good flap to get in. The sun's not completely down yet, but we're already getting really cold tonight. We're finally gonna have a nice cold camp. It's already down to negative 15 Celsius or about 5 Fahrenheit. We're going real good now. Real hot. The wood stove is now getting so hot that the stovepipe is starting to become cherry red. And up here, we don't see any melting, so I did a good job up there. Look at that. It's so hot. And if you accidentally touch it, it burns like your fingerprint off. It's now running so hot. Let's try this. Just leave it cracked for now so it gets some good air. Then we'll leave it open again. When the door is open, it produces a lot more heat. But when you first throw something in, it makes a little bit of smoke. Now that it's venting a lot, we can open it. There's a little bit of flame coming out, but there's no smoke along with it, so in the morning I can just wipe off the soot. That's a good thing about it being stainless steel. Yeah, that's making a lot of heat now. Letting a little bit of flame come in here. But if you look up at the ceiling here, there's no smoke coming in here, so we're good. Here's what it looks like from outside. Just a little glow of fire flickering, and you can see a couple sparks shooting out of the chimney right there. Yeah, a couple sparks here and there. Now, if I had the chimney cap on, it would bounce off of that and potentially come down and make a bunch of holes in the tarp. So, if it's not the dry season, no need for a spark arrestor. You see the sparks are only going up a little bit and going out. It's quickly becoming a muddy mess in here on the floor. Only walking outside for about 15 minutes, the stove almost completely burned through that wood that you saw in there. It's like a little rocket stove. It makes a lot of heat, but not for very long. So at night, we might actually have to run the gas heater when we're sleeping. All right, everyone, we've been in here now almost 7 hours feeding the fire. And outside right now, we'll do another temperature check. I actually haven't been out there in quite a few hours, but the last time I checked, you saw it was very cold out there. And inside right now, we're at 12 Celsius or about 54 Fahrenheit. When the thermometer was back here, it wasn't really going up much. And inside here, we could not even keep it above the freezing mark with just the wood stove. It's very cold out, it's a big space, so we're also using this thing here. Also, I realized this stove would never be able to go through the night. It runs like a rocket stove. It burns through stuff too fast. You leave it for an hour, it's completely cold again. So this stove here is not that type that would go overnight. My other stove will go overnight, the bigger guide gear one. We'll use that type of stove again soon. Also, I like to sit here a lot and poke at the fire and stuff. This type of stove, the way the chimney is set up, isn't the best. So it gives you a big window to look at it, like if you want to run it closed. Sometime we'll use an actual hot tent, which is very airtight. And if this was in an actual hot tent, it would do an awesome job producing heat. But I leave the door open, it throws more heat. Now the type where it's the long way, like it would have a smaller door and window on the side with the pipe all the way at the rear, those ones have a better sucking current, so you can leave the door open without getting smoke. So it was smoking in here a little bit, not too bad, but that is the difference with stoves. So now we're gonna start cooking some dinner. And there's also, you see all over the tent, that's just little pieces of ash, I believe. Oh yeah, that's what that is, little things flicking out of the fire because I had the door open. So we have some broth and a can opener. We're gonna start this broth, maybe dilute it with a bottle of water on the stove. Just gonna start off by heating that up, and while the broth is heating, got a bunch of vegetables I'll start cutting on the little cutting board. This will be my little surface here. Solid enough. We're going to dilute it with 1 bottle of water. It looks like there's a ball of fat in there too. Now we'll wait for that to heat up. In the meantime, I'm going to start cutting up some vegetables. Right here we got some kidney beans, which I'm just going to let them drain for a while. The juice is out of them. Alright everyone, now we have some celery, red potato, a white potato, and some carrots, and an onion. We might not use all of these. We'll leave the rest out in front of a trail camera maybe. But whatever I can fit into the pot nicely. Alright everyone, the broth is starting to boil. Not boiling that hot yet, so I'm going to throw everything in right now, occasionally stirring it. I got to work on this fire, getting that going much hotter like it was before. Going to throw everything in. These onions should turn like translucent to maybe add a lot of flavor. Alright everyone, now I gotta stir it and we're gonna add some spices. It's gonna be a while until this cooks since the fire's not really going that hot yet. That was pepper, some thyme, and I'm starting to get cramps in my legs because I've been sitting like this a while. Here's some garlic powder. And a little bit of salt. Alright everyone, so this thankfully doesn't get too hot. It actually doesn't get hot at all, so you can open it nicely. Every time I poke it around, it seems to flare up a whole bunch more, which is nice. I'm gonna add some pieces of wood. Keep it burning hot. Let's go stir it. It's been a little bit. Oh, thankfully this is starting to heat up. It's starting to smell pretty good too. Yep, nice and hot. It's gonna keep getting hotter. We'll probably have to let that cook for a lot longer though. It's been another 10 minutes or so. Just gonna stir the fire around, get some more flames. Flip some things around and you see the flames start picking up again pretty quickly. Leave that open for now. Now we're actually boiling nicely. Look at that. Gonna go ahead and stir it. Gotta wipe the spoon off in the snow. Accidentally got sawdust on it. But that's okay. We'll add the beans last because they're like pre-cooked and they're already soft. Let's give that one stir. Now I'm gonna go ahead and grab a carrot as a test subject. I don't think it's near ready yet, but I think the carrots will probably take the longest. I'm gonna test and see if it's soft, but it is very hot. Well, I think it's actually might be ready. We can add the beans. Just about. Couple more minutes maybe. Then we'll add the beans and we'll be done. The beans, because they're already cooked, we'll just dump them in. And that'll actually help cool it down a little so we can eat. And then the pan is going to be so hot. I'm going to pick it up, put it down in the snow, and that'll help cool it to a nice eatable temperature. Alright everyone, we're going to go ahead and add the beans now that they are all going to be completely drained out. Let's see what the texture of these is. Pretty good. Dump it in there for a little bit. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is done now. Yep. So, is this too hot to touch? Nope. I'm gonna go ahead and put it down in the snow. That'll cool the bottom of the pan because This pot has a very thick bottom, so even when you pull it off, 20 minutes later, it's still hot enough to burn you. So that'll also cool the broth. We'll just let it sit in the snow for like 5 minutes, and then that'll get cold very quickly. Yeah, this isn't too hot. Well, the one next to the chimney pipe's a little hotter, but thankfully, the stove came with heat-proof mittens, so I can pick them up. They're just like little pot holders. That's where it's going. That's gonna be good. We're gonna let it sit there and cool for maybe 5 minutes or so. We'll stir it, if not, maybe 10 minutes. Look at all the steam it's producing over there. That's awesome. Fire's running nice and hot. The soot right there can just be wiped off. It's barely smoking into the room, if anything, right now, so we're just leaving that open, producing more heat. We do have another propane can, thankfully, because we'll probably run that all night. Temperature, it's saying 5, but this is kind of far away from the fire, but it's in the room. Doing pretty good. That right there is still pretty hot. I'm gonna go ahead and stir it again, because the bottom will probably be getting cold. Look how much the pot is already sunk into the snow. So how are we doing? Still very hot. Let that sit a bit longer. All right, everyone. Now we just threw a few pieces on. I'll have to cut this in half, but it's time for the stew. This one's a little dirty. I'm just gonna wipe it out. Good enough. Nice, comfortable temperature. Just gonna pour a little broth, then I'll scoop out some stuff. Here's the silverware, and time to eat. Let's give it a try. Amazingly, the onion still has a bit of crunch to it. It didn't even turn translucent, but yet the potato chunks and carrots all cooked. Let's try a piece of the... Where's the celery? Did I not get a piece? Yeah, there's some of it. And some beans. This came out really good. I'm gonna have a whole lot of it. sap. All right, everyone, we just cut up some firewood. We got this thing running nice and hot again. Barely any smoke. Sometimes you see a flame come out, but no smoke's coming in. I just created a little stockpile now because once that dies down a little into more hot coals, I'm gonna stuff as much as I possibly can in there, shut the door, shut the damper, so we're gonna try to get it to burn a little slow. And we're gonna go walk in the woods for maybe an hour or so, and hopefully when we get back it's hot enough to throw more stuff on top. Even though it's burning so hot, even though when we shut the light off, it's a little bit red right there, nothing's melting. That worked out perfect. And we have a bunch of flashing to maybe do it again sometime. It's very slippery in here. The tarp on the snow. Maybe by morning we'll melt down enough where we won't slip. Right here, the sawdust really helped cover up the mud, because you see all around in front of the stove has now completely melted. But I think I even mentioned in the video, if you put a blanket on the snow between the tarp, that will help not slip like this. I forgot the blanket. Maybe we'll try it next time. All right, everyone. It is almost midnight. I just ventured up here onto the firewood pile and looked around for some pieces. I did find one piece of hardwood that actually fit in the stove, which I think will burn a long time. I also grabbed a whole ton of bark. This bark burns a pretty long time actually in the little stove. Got only 2 big chunks of pine left. This is all we got left. We burned through this faster than I thought, although this stove has been running since about 2 in the afternoon. See, I got one big piece of hardwood in there. Let's open this up. This little handle never gets hot. That'll burn for a long time. Hardwood lasts longer. It's more energy dense. It burns hotter and longer, so that's good. We're gonna head out to the other side of the wood pile because it's way more open than this. And we're gonna try to get a ton more bark instead of going back into the woods and getting this, because this stuff seems to burn a lot better because it's so dry in the little stove. The pipe is starting to turn cherry red again, especially with the hardwoods. See if we shut these light sources off, how much it actually is glowing. Let's shut this one off just for now too. Listen to that crinkling sound as it rapidly cools down. Still glowing red. That thing was so hot. Yep, take a look at the stovepipe. It's actually showing brighter on camera than in real life. Yeah, that's burning real hot. And it's because of the hardwoods. You see there's not much flame, but it is burning real hot. I even have the damper shut as much as I could, see? Wow, look at the side of the stove. The stove itself is actually glowing red a little bit. How about this side? Nope. And the back of it I'm not going to look at because it has a heat shield. Cool. Alright, we're going to go ahead and fire this thing back up. I believe I need 2 hands to do that. Again. So this thing here is producing a lot of heat, but not quite enough for this large tent and leaky tent. It's also very, very cold out. The last time I checked it was negative 18 Celsius. Inside we are at 13 Celsius. So big difference. When I pick it up, 14 Celsius or about 58 Fahrenheit. Let's go look outside again at that thermometer. So there's a giant temperature difference. All right, everyone, let's go over to the other side of the pile and look for some dry bark. I can feel the heat coming from the camp, blowing all the way out of here. It's actually warm under here from the other side. And we got fireworks. Let's set off some of these. I don't think they make any noise. I think they're just colorful ones. It's really good for fireworks having hard, crunchy snow to just jab it into the ground. It's so easy. And that's it. Did them all at once. That was kind of cool. It's kind of a boring firework. Doesn't really make much noise. It's so cold out that the snow is crunchy. And here's another propane tank that's completely full, because that one will probably run out tonight. Listen to the noise it makes. That noise is like nails on a chalkboard. I kind of like that noise. Anyone who's watched my videos for like 3 years may have seen me do the same thing with a gigantic, I think, 300-pound maybe propane tank, a huge one when it was cold out. I love when it's this cold and the snow becomes squeaky. I think it's got to be fluffy to be squeaky, but it's still very crunchy because this snow has been melting and refreezing many times. That's why we can walk on the surface of it now. Temperature update on the outside before we go in for the night and sleep. It is -1 Fahrenheit and -18 Celsius. We're about to head inside now. Actually looks kind of cool. It looks purple. Let's see if we actually put a blue light on it, how it looks. A red light. Can't see smoke really with a red light. Blue light. That looks really cool actually. Yeah, it looks really cool with a blue light. The air current's making the door rumble back and forth. The hardwood bark actually burns a lot longer. We got this one piece that will fit in the stove, this one piece of hardwood, very thick. We'll throw that in right before bed, and that'll provide some extra heat for a few hours. But we're also gonna sleep with the propane heater back on. The wood stove has been the only thing running for the past hour or so, and inside here is still pretty warm. This is on the opposite side of the room, and we're still pretty warm. 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius. And remember, this heat is transferring all the way through the pile. That's quite a distance, maybe 30 feet. It was still warm in the other end. Just the wood stove doing it now. And it shows the difference. If you're burning nice hardwoods, the stove produces a lot more heat for a longer amount of time. The soft wood we were burning before is only half the BTU value, half the heat. Really shows the difference now, the better wood. Oh wow, that is cool. It's running so hot right now. Wow, that is awesome. That is really cool. Wow. If I remove the light, is the whole pipe gonna start glowing? That's pretty cool. All right, everyone, it is 9:20 in the morning and temperature is still very cold outside. We're looking at about 5 degrees Fahrenheit or -14 Celsius. Gonna go ahead and shut this door. So amazingly overnight, this heater did not run out of propane on high, even though we started with a half a tank because we used this other half a tank in the last camping video. The wood stove burned out a long time ago. We're gonna start that back up to boil some water in this pot. And we have these instant camping meals, which are freeze-dried. You just add water, add 2 cups to each. Each one of these is about 2 cups. So we'll heat that up once we get the stove going. It'll get going fast. We have a lot of dry bark and stuff. And this tank, it froze itself to the ground. And I triggered its tip over sensor. So we'll fire that thing back up. Opening the stove back up. Yep, we completely filled in with ash underneath the grates. So as soon as breakfast is done, I'll disconnect the wood stove and dump the entire firebox outside, but that's okay. We can still start a fire in there. All right, everyone, it's time to start boiling some water. One, two. It's okay if a little of that boils off. These are slightly bigger than 2 cups, so we'll leave that for a while. It really only took the stove less than 10 minutes to get up to temp. Last night I found out something actually awesome. The heavy-duty sleeping bag I have here, it's very thick for very cold temperatures. I thought every time I got it dirty I was going to have to bring it to a laundromat because it's so big. But then I realized the zipper goes all the way around and it separates into 2 pieces so you can wash it in 2 different sets. That makes it way easier to go ahead and wash this thing when it gets dirty. Like in here, this smoke from the camp wasn't that bad, but if I walk outside, I can slightly smell it on my clothes. Not too bad. I don't think I'll wash the sleeping bag this time, but maybe next time, because we are getting miscellaneous things spilled on it and some mud in camps like this. The sawdust really helps absorb the mud, and the stove has already dried out the mud it created. Boiling it. Oh, it's already warm, but not too hot to touch. Only been on there like 5 minutes. We got a spider friend in here. All right, everyone, we're outside now. There was barely any wind last night, so no issues with the tarps. Today doesn't look like it's going to be a sunny day, so we'll probably not have any help but the sun. Yesterday, this thing kind of acted a little like a greenhouse. It got warm in there just because the sun was out. I don't think that'll happen today. Right here on the outside, you see this is just pieces of ash that get shot up in the air. They settle back down. and most of them is just ash, but a couple of them actually were hot enough to burn holes back into the tent. And that's the reason a setup like this, you shouldn't use it if it's really dry in the summer. Just make sure it's raining. But around here, in this area of Canada anyways, if there's snow on the ground, no burning permit required. Lots of nice bird noises out here. There's lots of happy birds out here. I hear them. And a rooster in the background. Just a minute later, the wood stove pipe is now burning clean. It got that perfect airflow going. I love to just listen to the birds for a few minutes. They're so peaceful. Time to go back in and see how our boiling water's doing. Oh, coming along. Not boiling quite yet, but too hot to touch. Look what I just found in here. This is not hot anymore. Gigantic caterpillar. Is that like a woolly bear? I don't think it is. This one's completely black. You see how it's covered in frost? It's like in hibernation state. We're gonna go ahead and not wake it up because it'll probably die if it wakes up. So I'm gonna take it and we're gonna just toss it back outside in the snow so it can continue hibernation. No, I'm gonna walk it to the other side of the wood pile because it's cute. Thing's really big. Just toss it in here so it doesn't wake up from its slumber. Get right down in that hole. Alright everyone, let me open these up and show you what they look like inside because it's time to pour the water in. That's boiling enough. Alright everyone, so here's what it looks like inside. Once we add water, let it sit 12 to 15 minutes. It'll be time to eat. Gotta remove these things, and I got toothpaste all over my pants last night. Okay, we're gonna open this now. It's boiling nicely. And we're gonna try to pour it in here without getting burned. Just set them down on the floor. Try to get an even half and half. Here's one. Here's the other. So I'll let that absorb and then I'll put a little more as we go. And I gotta get a fork out and stir that occasionally. Now this thing says 2 cups or 500 milliliters. Those bottles I'm using are 500 milliliters, but when I look up 2 cups, or when I look up 1 cup, it says 236. So I guess that slight being off doesn't really matter. And they must know that most people have that common water bottle. Alright, about 5 minutes later, we look in here. It's very steamy, but I'm stirring occasionally. It's starting to thicken up. Yes, I did add the rest of the water now, since it almost absorbed it. Just occasionally stirring it, making sure not to puncture the bag with the fork. All right, everyone, these have been in here 15 minutes. Still very hot, though. Let's see if they're cooked. Let's get a bite of that. A little bit longer. That pasta still has a little crunch to it. It's not completely hydrated yet. And the rice. The rice, I think, is good. So it tastes good, it just needs a little bit more time to hydrate. This thing's about to run out of gas, finally. Gonna go out any second. Take a look at this thick black smoke coming out of the chimney now. It looks like when a steam train is taking off. Well, that's what happens when you put a piece of birch bark in there. It burns dirty and it smells like diesel because it's so oily. It'll do that for a few minutes. And it's done smoking. It's still warm in here, but I'm gonna put a jacket on in a moment anyways. I'm gonna dump this, we're not gonna use the rest of this. Alright everyone, I'm packing up everything, and the soup from last night, when you open it, it makes the whole room smell like a giant fart. Doesn't smell pleasant anymore. Look at this, it's frozen to the ground, but this idea that one of my subscribers had did work. That should be cold enough to touch in the next half hour or so. Then I can bring it outside, dump it out, disassemble it, and all the pipes and stuff fit back inside it. Yeah, I got it out. Even though it's not the right type of hammer. One more stake here. I just burned the little string instead of untying it. Now that comes down. A couple more pieces of tape, get it off without touching the hot stove. The duct tape comes off nice and easy, so I can go ahead and fold that tarp and reuse it. These tarps here
because we have a hole in it. Also, from running the wood stove, you can clearly see the white tarp has a good amount of soot on it, inside and out. Also has a few burn holes, so it won't be used again for camping, but it can still be used for covering something. This is actually almost cold enough to take apart soon. Healing up just a little bit to get the sled full of supplies out of here. It'll take a couple of trips to get it back to the vehicle. Didn't even have to touch the second propane tank, amazingly. All right, everyone, the stove pipes are now a perfect temperature to keep your hands warm, but not hot enough to get burned. On the inside, you can see we got a little bit of creosote buildup. Not too bad, though. Can any of that be knocked out? Yep. We'll have to knock the pipes out before we put them away. Still a little too hot to touch this piece, so whoa. Fireproof gloves, huh? They melt right on there, so not the best. One of the stoves I bought one of these years actually came with like welder's gloves. You could touch anything, but nope, they melted, the gloves it came with. This one's really on there. It's gonna be a challenge getting it back on next time. Well, it is still hot, and metal shrinks when it gets cold, so it should be okay. Trying to get it off again. Got it off. Well, these do work on a touchscreen, which is kind of cool, but they're not heat proof. See, I got a little bit melted on there. The next use, that'll all burn off again. Still too hot to touch the stove, but the handles, we're gonna go dump it outside. Trying to get the grates out of it. Now without the hot coals, that thing will cool down very fast. Still some hot coals in there, but that'll go out pretty fast. So these are cooled down now because they're touching snow. They didn't warp. One of my other stoves had thinner ones that warped, but look at that. They look like a rainbow now as the color is just, yeah, that's what happens when the temper of the metal is changed. See on the side, it kind of looks like a rainbow. All over it kind of looks like a rainbow. But it's stainless steel, it still won't rust. Put that, no, we got to shake it out a little better. There's still a little bit of soot in the corners. You want to clean that up pretty well or it makes it a mess during transportation. All right, stove is all cleaned up. Back in the box. The top of it's still a little uncomfortable to touch, but that's because the top of it's the cooking surface. They made it really thick. The sides are very thin. Temperature's going up. Look at that. We're at about 34 Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius. The sun's coming out. The one I hammered into the log, I can't get it out. I'm just bending it back and forth. And the mud can be easily cleaned off in the snow. And there's one on the other side. All right, everyone. That thing's all folded up. That folded up actually very easily. Got to put a few tools away and everything will be left the way it was before we came. We melted a pretty good area here. Maybe a mouse will come by and eat the vegetable scraps. Just a few more things to throw in the car and we're just about done. Temperature's still rising. We're now at about 36 Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius. All right, everyone. Everything is cleaned up We have a bit of laundry to do and cleaning of the stuff when we get back, but we're all cleaned up here except for the stakes. That's the last thing I gotta grab, and it looks like we're good. I hope today's video was interesting, everybody. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. This prickly cactus-like plant, it's got a lot of big thorns. It really hurts, especially when it's alive and green. It also has these prickly flowers, which are bright pink, and they're really beautiful. There'll be a lot of them probably next year. Got all these seeds that this thing's about to drop off.